Materials required for the art of spray painting can be found anywhere. I would begin in your garage and see what you have. You're going to need various colors. Make sure that they're all gloss and part of the same brand. Usually mixing brands can cause some undesired effects. You're going to need poster board. You're going to need some magazine sheets, masking tape, popsicle sticks, foam brushes, different size straight edges, the Spraycasso tools. If you have any questions on how to create the Spraycasso tools, please visit my website at www.spraycasso.com. Most importantly, we recommend you use a mask that has filters on the side. Though spray painting can be a lot of fun, it can be very hazardous to your health. So if you're going to spray paint, make sure you do it outside or in a well-ventilated area. Spraycasso does not condone the misuse of spray paints or destructive art such as graffiti. Please spray paint responsibly. In today's spray painting, I'm going to show you how to create a black and white painting. I hope you guys are ready for this. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to show you how to create this using only black spray paints, has to be gloss, and magazine sheets. Yep, that's it. So if you guys are ready, grab your spray paint mask, your materials. Let's begin. First, we're going to begin with the sky. Now to do this, I'm just going to use black. This is a black and white one, so we're going to have to use variants of different grays here to create the illusion that there's more to this sky than just plain gray. So I'm just going to add certain areas. I'm just going to darken up a little bit more, make the illusion that there's clouds back here. Alright, now using a straight edge, I'm going to separate the sky from the water. We're going to create some water here on the bottom. Alright, to create a fine line, you want to spray directly onto your straight edge, not on the painting. Let me show you what happens, the difference between spraying on the straight edge and spraying directly onto your canvas. As you can tell, it looks a little bit darker. See? Alright, now we want this because I'm going to create some terrain, and I want the illusion that you can see the reflection of this terrain on the water. So I'm going to darken the water a little bit more. I'm going to make this water definition a little bit darker. I'm just going to move through here. Alright, now I'm going to spray a little bit of black here on some magazine sheets. And we're actually going to use a magazine sheet to create this effect. So I'm just going to tear off a piece of magazine here. Right there. Look at that. Plain old magazine. Okay, I'm going to tear off a little bit more. I'm going to tap into some black. And I'm going to begin creating a silhouette terrain layer. Any silhouette layer is created using only black. Terrain is no exception. We're just using black. The only difference here is that terrain silhouette layers tend to be very... they have a lot of detail rather than just plain black trees, plain bushes in the background. Silhouette terrains have a lot of detail to them. Why? Because we're tapping into some black and then we smear it downwards. This creates a variance of blacks, grays that mix into the layer. So we're creating a rocky terrain here in the background. Just like that. Now, as you can see, I'm already running out of black, so it may take a few times of you spraying some black onto your... well, you don't necessarily have to use magazine sheets. The only reason I use magazine sheets is because they're easy to throw away. Once I'm done with this one, I'm just going to fold it, throw it in the trash. You can use palettes, like you see oil painters use. You can use some of that. You can make your own piece of cardboard or even a piece of wood. Again, I use the magazine. It's easy to throw away for me. It's going to create a few more layers here. Now notice I'm overlapping the water layer. I created a straight line and then now I'm overlapping it. This will give you a more realistic looking effect on your terrain. You don't want the terrain to stop on a completely perfectly symmetrically correct just line. You want to add some reality to your painting. So overlap the straight line. Okay, I'm just going to add some more terrain here in the background. I'm just going to smear it in. So you want to tap and smear. Tap and smear. See that? Now look how it goes from a really dark black and then it gets all these nice little variances of gray, which give you that rocky terrain. Okay, I'm going to use a piece of sea sponge. And we're going to create another silhouette layer using the same magazine sheet here that I've been using as my palette. Just gonna tap, Now notice you don't need a whole lot of sea sponge, just a little bit. I'm going to create some trees in the background. This is going to be a silhouette layer of trees. Tap, tap, tap. Now when you tap, it's a little bit different than when you tap creating a terrain. I'm also smearing upwards. I want some of that black to create grass strands. Okay, so I'm just going to tap a little bit more here. I'm going to make these far away. So I'm not too concentrated in them being too dark. I want the illusion that they're off in the distance. So they look a little bit light gray, and that's great for what we need. If you need them darker, well, you just add a little bit more black on top of that. But for now, this is perfect. Now, you'll learn how to create the grass technique. I have several videos online that you can go check out that show you how to use the grass technique to create realistic looking grass. I also use it a lot to create the fur of animals. It's basically the same technique. Okay, we're going to create a tree. Now notice this tree's closer to us, so I'm going to darken it up a little bit more. It has to be a little bit darker. It's closer to us. One of the rules of thumb, as it gets closer to you, it gets darker. When creating trees, the smaller you make them, the further away they are. This is some of the techniques that I personally use a lot to create the illusion of depth on paintings. Alright, we're just going to add a little more black. I'm going to create another silhouette layer of grass strands. Now, I always say this, guys. You want to make sure that some of these grass strands go into the water. It just adds a little more realism to your painting. They don't stop completely flush on the straight line. They cross that line. They go into the water. Let's make another tree right here. Now notice the variance of colors here. Even though it's just black and white, notice that the trees in the further back are light gray. And as it gets closer to you, it gets darker. I think we're ready for another layer. So this is going to be a silhouette layer. I'm going to create some more terrain. Probably add a little land right here closer to us. Perhaps this is where we're standing looking at this scenery in the background. So I'm just going to tap and smear. Add a little bit more black. You can also use this technique using the soft tip Spraycasso tool. Alright. Just going to smear it downwards. And see, I love how that you can see the definition of the land. You can see the rocks. It begins to take shape. You can almost even see highlights, natural highlights, and shadows. Just gonna add a little more right here. Okay, just smear it upwards. Yep. Perhaps this gives the illusion of a little bit of mudslide. Just like this. Easy, right? Anybody can do this. Okay, I think I've used enough of this piece. I just threw that away. You can use a little bit of black to blend in your terrain. Oh, I'm running out of black, guys. Don't ever forget to shake your cans and pre-spray them before you start spraying them directly onto your canvas or a poster board. The reason we do this is so that you get to mix the drying agents and the gloss. Just throw that away. Before we start working on the layers that are closest to us, I'm going to use another silhouette layer. So I'm just going to tear off a piece of sea sponge. Just a little bit. I'm going to spray some black here on another piece of magazine. Right there. I'm going to tap into it. This is going to be a grass layer. So I'm just going to tear off a piece. See, you don't need a whole lot. The smaller the pieces, sometimes it is better to create finer details. So I'm just going to add a few grass strands right here. Some here on the bottom. Now notice it's just quick strokes upwards. Now we're ready to add a little more definition to the water that we made here and to separate the land from the water. So I'm going to shake and pre-spray my white. I'm going to use a straight edge. I'm just going to place it right at the base of this terrain. And it's going to be a quick spray. You don't want to spray directly onto your canvas. You want to spray right at your straight edge. Okay, now see how it gives it that reflective look? That's exactly what we want. This adds a reflective layer to the water. Now to create the effect of ripples, perhaps moving water, you're going to add a little bit of clear coat on top of that. And with your finger, you can also use a magazine sheet. You're just going to move it back and forth to create this effect. Don't be afraid to go back over certain areas if you feel that it could use a little more movement. Notice how I'm just going back and forth, and then I moved my way up again. Here, I'm blending the edges of the terrain where the terrain meets the water with my finger. Then at the end, you can just clean it off with a little rag. You can also use a little bit of clear coat on your fingers, guys, and clean that off. Using the Spraycasso funnel, I'm going to spray some black into this. And we're going to add another layer. This is going to be a silhouette layer of a tree. Okay, we're going to place that just right here. And I'm just going to create the shape of a tree, maybe add a few branches. Right here. Now right now the tree is floating on water. That's okay. I intend on adding another layer of terrain on the bottom of this tree. So using a magazine sheet, once you've created your tree, we're going to smear some of the paint, just as we did above and below, by tapping into some black and smearing it onto our canvas. Just going to do this a couple of times. And I think we're ready for another layer. This is going to be the light source. So I'm going to pre-shake and spray my can before I do this on the canvas. Using a straight edge and my white, I'm going to create a sunburst. You guys remember how to do this? Very simple. You spray directly onto your straight edge, not the canvas. This will give you a very sharp, defined line. So I'm going to do this a couple of times. It's important that you practice before doing this final step, guys. And I mean practice it off on the side somewhere, off your canvas like I'm doing here. Just to make sure you know exactly where the center of your spray is going to be. You don't want to mess this up. You want to make sure you try and get the center of the light burst right where all the points intersect. Here I'm going to create the illusion that this is a reflection on the water. So I'm going to create something similar to the starburst above, except I'm going to use a little bit of clear coat on top of this. Alright, just get a little bit of clear coat going on. And we're going to smear it to create the effect that there's ripples on this water. Now I don't want to smear it completely to where it vanishes. I just want to smear it to where it creates this ripple effect. Good. This will add a touch of realism to your painting as well. Here we're going to add another layer of grass, and this is going to be just some of the plants that are in the background, some of the grass strands that go into the water. Just going to create some right here, and we're going to do this throughout our painting. So we're going to start from the bottom up. And notice how I'm working those layers with the existing layers in the background. Add a little bit of white. And with the magazine sheet, just a piece, small piece. I'm going to tap into some white. And I'm going to create the illusion that there's some light being reflected off these rocks. So this is going to be a highlight layer. We're going to want to do this throughout our painting. Remember that there's light hitting these rocks, there's light hitting these plants. So all the highlights have to be facing towards our light source. Alright, just going to add a little bit here. Perhaps we can create a small rock here closer to us. We're standing right next to it. Okay, create some rocks here in the distance. Now, the silhouette layer of terrain that we added earlier gives us a definition where these rocks are going to be at, where these pieces of land that are getting hit by the sunburst are going to be located. All you have to do is just follow the contours. Alright. This will give your painting a very natural flow of the light. To create another great illusion of depth onto your painting, you can add another silhouette layer of grass overlapping some of these highlighted areas on your painting. This will give you the effect that there's plants closer to you, that there's plants overlapping these highlighted areas. The more layers you add to your painting, the more realistic it will look. So don't be afraid to experiment. Go ahead and cross some lines, overlap some of your highlights, add perhaps some more grass strands near your tree, or in this case, notice how I'm going into the water. It's going to create a few more overlapping some of these rocks here. Alright. Perhaps we have some more bushes growing right here on the edge of this rock. You also want to define some of the places that have a little bit more grass strands closer to you. So I'm just going to paint a couple of them down here. Good. I'm going to create a couple of grass strands overlapping our tree. All right, a little more black using the same sea sponge. That's the beauty about sea sponges. You don't require a whole lot. You can just get a good chunk, tear small pieces off of it, and if you're gonna switch colors and you don't want to color contaminate, you just throw away that small piece and use another one. Here I'm just gonna add some tree leaves. Now this is just a layer, a silhouette layer of tree leaves. There's no color to it, so it's very simple to experiment using a black and white painting, because you're able to create everything using just black and white, the details on the terrain, the rocky terrain as well, water effects. Once you start getting better at this, you can start experimenting by adding color. But again, we all learn differently. It's up to you guys. Give this black and white painting a try. Let's create another silhouette layer of a tree branch. Perhaps this one's off the screen, kind of going into our picture here. So you don't get to see the entire tree, you just get to see a small portion of it. A little more black. Just going to create the tree leaves here in the background. Here's another wonderful thing about the sea sponge is that it creates very realistic looking tree leaves. You're able to see different patterns. It's never the same pattern because it's never the same sea sponge. You can always twist it, you can turn it, you can flip it to the other side and create different patterns. We're going to use the light and dark technique on this tree to create a nice 3D effect. We're going to spray directly onto our straight edge and just let the shadow fall onto the tree. Now we're not going to do the light part of this technique, just the dark technique. I suppose you could use the light, but I think that it would be a little bit too overpowering. So I'm just going to add the shadow and leave it as it is. Okay, let's put this down. Let's take a quick look at our progress so far. You have that nice burst in the background, you have some highlighted areas, you have the nice reflection on your water, and you have some silhouette trees that are really close to you with a lot of detail on the branches and the tree leaves. Just gonna add a little bit more white here on these edges. We had done this one before, but then we kind of smeared the color into a moving water. So I'm just gonna go back here and add it one more time. I don't think I'm going to make it as bright this time. Remember, I'm spraying directly onto the straight edge and not the canvas. Alright, let's put this down. Let's see. I think it's time that we start adding some highlights on our plant life as well as some of the trees on our background. So I'm going to spray a little bit of white here off on our sheet of magazine using a bit of sea sponge. I'm just going to tap a couple times, going to get the desired effect I'm looking for. And I'm going to begin by adding the highlights on the trees in the background. This is the first set of trees that we added. And then I'm going to move on to the tree that we just newly created. Good. Alright. Just going to add a few of them here. Now you're also going to see that the white is going to make certain aspects of your plant life really stand out. In fact, it'll even create the illusion that there's little flowers around the area. So I'm just going to play with that. It all depends on the pattern on the sea sponge that you're using. So notice that before I started doing the highlights on my painting, I kind of did it off on the side on the table. just to kind of get a feel of what the pattern's going to look like. I'm going to add a little bit here on this tree in the distance. And I'm just doing the edges, and just the edges that are closer to our light source. Alright, now that we've added our highlights, I'm just going to add a little bit of black here on the bottom, just to kind of fade the terrain that we created. And it'll also give me an opportunity to add another layer of grass here. And so that it looks like this layer is closer to us. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit more here. And I think we're done. Don't forget the most important thing about your painting, it is your signature. So with a little bit of clear coat, we're going to moisten out the painting. And here we go, Spraycasso. Alright, well I hope you guys have enjoyed today's spray painting. It's been a lot of fun. And I definitely can't wait to see you guys for the next one. Let's take a closer look at our painting. Look at that. Pretty neat, huh? Awesome. Well, there you have it. Alright, well that concludes today's spray painting. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Until next time, crew, keep those cans shaking.